Good morning, people. This is Gerald Jones, and this is The Natural King, unedited, unscripted dialogue or plan to be discussion between listeners. Hopefully, I'm going to try to build to have a little telephone discussion so I can answer questions. But first and foremost, this, like I said, is Natural Kings. You can Twitter me, you can Facebook me at King Gerald Jones. On Twitter, you can find me at no space at King Gerald Jones. Facebook, King space Gerald space Jones. This is an unedited, unscripted discussion. There's no scripts. It's just basically freestyling about things that I've researched, things that I would like to discuss with people. And as I said, this is the third installment, and it's like basically a 30-minute episode, a 30-minute show. I'm going to get right into it. Before I was talking about polarities, I've talked about submission, I've talked about dominance, I've talked about the man's position as a family, I've talked about a woman's position. There's a couple of things that I've brought to my attention that I want to clarify because so far I have been getting Facebooks and Twitters asking me questions about, the things that I've said or the things I've believed in. So hopefully I can touch on those bases and, answer any questions that may be. Because in my opinion, this modern day society, we're in need of leaders, we're in need of philosophers, we're in need of direction because we're missing that. So that's basically what I'm here for, or if nothing else, to encourage dialogue, to get an understanding, not just between men and women, but to get an understanding of what's right, what's wrong, and what we should be doing as human beings to progress in this life. As I said before, I've talked about polarities, I've talked about incompletion, I've talked about the male's role, the woman's role, women choosing, so on and so forth. I'm going to talk right now about what I refer to as the defense mechanism. As everyone, you might not know, so I'm going to describe. In life, you have dominant and you have polarities that in some cases people are weaker or stronger than other people, or not even people, but organisms or entities or anything, atoms. This goes all the way back to cells. You have dominant and recessive traits, so on and so forth. So these are things that exist not just in our everyday society or what we see on a day-to-day basis, but this exists, behind the scenes, if you may, or if you want to call it that. As I spoke about polarities, basically is opposites that even each other out to make life simpler, or make life easier, or make life better. And I'm going to describe what is the defense mechanism because I always speak on the dominance and the strength of men. And women that question me, they want to know, well, true, we know our roles, we know our positions, but where's our strength at, or where's our... And the crazy part about it, that's when I came up with this analogy called the defense mechanism. And defense mechanism is basically the woman's ability to be able to survive, the woman's ability to be able to mingle with the stronger or the more powerful or dominant man, traits, genes, whatever if you want to talk about organisms, or if you want to talk about us as mammals, or if you want to talk about whatever you want to talk about, is for the weaker species to be able to have one up or have even things out or have an even playing field. For example, I'm going to give you an example of a defense mechanism. I was watching National Geographic, and they were talking, and I forget what kind of blowfish it was called, but it was a certain kind of fish, and it lived at the bottom of the sea. Now, what happened at this fish, hold on. This fish, he was slow, it was ugly, it was unattractive, it was slow, he couldn't swim after the faster fish to eat. He was unattractive, so no one would attract to him. So he was, without the defense mechanism that I'm going to describe, he was unable to eat. So what nature dealt to him, or what life has dealt to him, was the defense mechanism of, on the top of this blowfish or this blowworm, he had stickers all poking out of him. He had a little antenna. Now, at the end of the antenna would flap back and forth, and it would give the illusion of a piece of a worm at the end of his antenna. So that would attract the other faster fish or the other bigger fish or the other stronger fish that he wasn't able to catch without this defense mechanism. So it would attract the other fish that would get real close and try to eat the worm that it displayed or the little antenna that shook at the top of his head. It would attract the other fish, and it would get close enough to this blowfish, and as they get closer, he was able to eat them. So the point that I'm making with this is that with him being weaker, with him being slower, with him being unattractive physically, he was able, through his defense mechanism, to survive. He was able, through his defense mechanism, to eat. He was able, through his defense mechanism, to survive and flourish to the next, which is the whole concept of, and I study evolution, and I'm not talking about the evolution of evolving from monkeys. I'm talking about evolution as far as what is the standpoint or what is the reason for constant growth, whether it be through man, whether it be through organisms, and the very least being cells and atoms. And if their job is to basically live on through the next generation and produce the most powerful, strongest offspring that they could possibly, and that's their whole thing, is self-preservation and producing the most powerful or the strongest seed that they can produce to basically carry on that name. And I'll speak a little bit more on this first two installments. I spoke a little bit on the ancients, and that was a custom or a belief or a system that was adopted by them as well. So it's a very strong system and it's very relevant, but I'll give you more on that on a different installment. But back to what I was talking about with the defense mechanism. So now use that same analogy or the same defense mechanism, let's say in a purist, if we weren't in modern day society when we're just barbaric, we're going to take the barbarians, we're going to take the barbaric where we were Neanderthals and we had no kind of, we basically didn't even have the will yet. So you may wonder, okay, if the women is so weak and if women is so obsolete or recessive person or thing, why would the man keep them around anyway? First and foremost, it was, once again, for the strongest offspring, because you can't produce offspring without these women. So that's step one of their necessity. That's step one of their reason for being and the reason that we need them, because they were needed for the offspring to be born. They were needed for the furtherment of that man's seed or that man's generation. Now, that was one. Two was, now if you look, and it's crazy, I always make sure I identify with the physical because that's what I'm going to attack first. Later, I think we get a little bit more understanding, I'm going to go into the mental, but we're going to always start with the physical first because that's like the easiest and that's the plainest to see. Now, the physically, as far as woman is concerned, there comes that opposite, that attraction, which men are attracted to the opposite. They're attracted to the softer. They're attracted to the nicer, the easier. And that's exactly what the woman brought. Not just with her softness, but the actual physicality of it. For example, the softness of her skin, the softness of her hair, the length of her hair. Those were the things that attracted, and those are now creating the defense mechanism. Those are creating the need for the man, or not, well, yeah, the need for the man not to just destroy or put aside the woman, but the attraction for us to want them there. So this is what I'm saying about the defense mechanism. The woman now, not only the softness, but even her breasts, or even her curves that she has, or even the thickness, or whether, just the softness or the whole makeup or the build of the woman. Like I said, I spoke about the breasts, which the breasts are really there for breastfeeding. And for when the man has his offspring from the woman, they're there for breastfeeding, but it's still an attraction because that's her defense mechanism for us, because men are attracted to the opposite. So when we see these breasts and we see her shape, the shape of a woman, which is the opposite of us, which is a more softer and curvier tone, it becomes a need. It becomes a want. It becomes, now she's not obsolete. Now there's a reason for her to be there. And that's just the physical. There goes also into the mental, as I said before, but we're going to just stick with the physical. There's the need there for him to not destroy her, for him not to put her away. So those two reasons, first of all, remember, it was for the offspring and for, the furtherment of his kingdom through his seeds. Then second of all, like I said, the defense mechanism is now her physical presence in the actual thing. Now, not to mention the sexual part of it. We haven't even gotten to that yet. Now, the actual sexual part of it and the feeling of it, that just puts the icing on the cake. So now he really wants her. He really doesn't see any reason to damage her. So now he begins to protect her because now she's relevant. Now he wants her. So now he begins to protect her. And that's where you get the whole concept of a man is there to provide and protect. And I throw my quote fingers up to that, protect. So now he doesn't want to lose her. So now not only is he protecting her from other men. He's protecting her from the elements. He's protecting her from losing that physicality or losing that shape or that soft skin. So he begins to protect her, as I said, and I'm putting the emphasis on protect because true, it's about protecting your woman from harm, but it goes deeper than that too as well. But we're just going to stick on the physicality as I keep repeating. It's a crazy thing because, as I say, I always quote this and say this, that I always discuss, man, I'm steady in dialogue, I'm steady in discussion with even my friends, not even if it's not about business, even if it's about dialogue with my female friends. And one of the things that came up, and this is kind of a quick sidebar, one of the things that came up was men and women sex. Like, who does it feel better to? Who wants to have sex more? Who wants to be more intimate? And the thing about it was I came to the decision through my research, true, men and women are equal. They both want to have sex. But the thing is, when women, and a woman, not a girl, but a woman knows and recognizes that when that sex comes to play, that emotions come into play. So she may be a little hesitant not to have sex with you as quickly as a man would a woman. So also going further and deeper into that, I began to study the anatomy of a woman and I began to study the anatomy of a man. And come to find out, in dealing with orgasms, the orgasms feel way better in a woman than it does for a man. And it begins to describe in the book, the anatomy book, that, and it's another book, like I said before, I don't name drop the other books that I read because they haven't paid me for this, and you won't get dollars off of my knowledge and my research and my speaking. So when you're ready to pay me, I'll name drop your books. Yeah, so it describes the orgasm of a woman as being shock waves through her body, or going all through her body, where that's not necessarily true to a man. So that first lets me know that the orgasm of a woman is different, or we can decipher, it's up for your opinion, feels better. Because if she's feeling it through a shockwave through her whole body, then that's a good thing, I would assume. As man has an orgasm, he doesn't feel that way. The orgasm doesn't feel that, quote-unquote, good for him, or it doesn't go through all his body like it would a woman who's having a true orgasm. Now, the second thing is this. I began to also research that when a man has sex and when he does have his orgasm or he ejaculates, that he begins to lose strength. He may not lose strength permanently, but temporarily he does lose strength. So does that occur to the woman? No, she doesn't lose strength. If nothing, it gives her strength. And I'm releasing and I'm giving her my strength. So that lets me to also, on top of that, lets me know that I'm giving her, quote unquote, and metaphorically, figuratively, and literally, I'm giving her my strength. Whoever I choose to sleep with, I am giving her my strength because at that moment in time, men have different setups. So whether it be 30 minutes, whether it be 5 minutes, whatever it takes for me to regroup, I have just given her my strength. So as I've given her my strength, I now become weaker. And she's still, so that's enough. And that also, sidebar, that also goes into the defense mechanism too, where now I have just given her my strength and I become weaker. So now